Hi, it's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy again, back with another little chat about the whole it ends with us legal drama. I don't think we even call it. We kind of forget almost linking it to the movie at this point. When all of this first started, we called it the it ends with us drama. I'm not sure it's that anymore. It's so much more than that now. But yeah, I'm heading kind of home today, the long journey back up north, so I'll be a bit more in my own space in the next videos and possibly a bit more with it, because literally everywhere I go here there's like a dog somewhere. So it's kind of been a bit of a challenge. But yeah, there's been a lot happening, hasn't there? And the other day somebody was kind of a little bit critical of me in the comments, and that's fine, because obviously you expect to get that, and it's absolutely fine that we have different opinions. But I just wanted to kind of point out there are people that are covering this really well and really thoroughly from the legal aspect of things, that have sources and can do that kind of thing, like Cassidy O'Connell, is it? And obviously Katie Joy at Without a Crystal Ball. I don't have that insight. I'm not here to really get into the conspiracy of it all and the legalities of it all. I'm keeping like a broad perspective on it, and I'm also talking about the emotions involved at all, so apologies if you don't find it factual enough. But at this point I'm not focusing too much on the Brett Douglas McDowell thing. I think it's important. I think the lady in question had a bit of a problem that I'd not kind of said an awful lot about that. I do believe him. I do believe that aspects of him and his wife's life have been taken by Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, that whole crowd that are involved with Wrexham, that are also creative people. And it's kind of like what I said to one of my other little friends on here, is that you can see how Blake and Ryan actually do make a good couple in terms of they clearly have a similar set of values, and they both seem to have this thing, or they don't really, or aren't able to create something that's entirely from scratch and original on their own. They have to appropriate things from somewhere else. We've had Blake admit that, you know, she doesn't like to work from scratch. She's had a production company that never produced anything. She can't do that. So she has to walk in onto a set and appropriate somebody else's work, or somebody else's costuming, or somebody else's music. And Ryan's the same, quite clearly, and quite clearly Rob McElhenney allegedly they seem to be, because there's great whole chunks of people's lives being appropriated, and even their looks, you know, touching on things that are technically their intellectual property and such as that, and they're doing it in a very clever way that they probably are advised that they can get away with. You know, they've probably run a lot of you know, they're probably savvy enough and have the right team enough that they know what they can and can't get away with. And that's been the problem all along with this case, is you are fighting a very clever hierarchy. That's what Justin's run into, really, Justin Baldoni. So that has been the difficulty all along. And we're seeing it now in terms of, I think it's Deandra on here. I hope I've got your name right, Deandra. She was saying, oh, could please tell me you've seen Without a Crystal Ball's latest update. And I said, oh, you mean that one where suddenly Ryan Reynolds is the CEO of Vanzan, and all that? Oh, what the hell? So yeah, it looks like kind of, there's always kind of been two elements of this Vanzan which confused people back in the beginning. One registered in California, one in New York, but both similarly the same. They've never done anything, they've never filed anything apart from that original purchase of furniture, supposedly for the Taylor Swift video back, the one that Blake directed. So yeah, all of a sudden Ryan has appeared as CEO. Now, I'm going to get mixed up here whether it's the New York arm or the California arm. But it's an interesting one, is that, because you kind of wonder, well, is it because he believes he's dismissed from this case now, since Justin's, you know, the huge chunk of Justin's case was thrown out. So does he think now that there's no way he can be dragged back into that, in any other words? So putting himself on it as a safe bet. But I also feel like it's another opportunity to get a dig in you know, because it's like, do it, it's like your typical narcissist thing. I'm going to do it right in your face and you're going to know about it and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. I feel like there's a lot of that about it. Or is there some weird way that he can twist it so that maximum effort has some kind of either official or unofficial contract of sorts with Jen Abel and something like that, in terms of can he pull something out of thin air and, you know, make kind of something up in some way that kind of makes it fly? But I really don't think so. I really kind of think that he maybe just thinks that, you know, he can get away with these things. I mean, after all, he's just been given the Order of Canada, hasn't he? You know, he's a very important Canadian. And I think that's the kind of things that get us, isn't it? It's like, and it was lovely to see Justin out the other day and looking quite happy and smiley at Disney World, and, you know, happily posing for selfies with fans. It was probably, it was a big step for him, wasn't it, really? Because I guess he could expect to be recognised and he wouldn't be quite sure how that would go and he wouldn't be sure what to respond. And it seems like he just dealt with it in a very natural, very organic kind of way. And, you know, if people seem to recognise him, he approached them and let them know it was okay to say hi, you know, because I guess a lot of us feel like it would, if we did bump into him, would it be okay to say hi, kind of thing, you know. At this point, I think we're all kind of a bit sensitive about him, aren't we, on his own behalf. But yeah, I think it's kind of sickening, that whole thing. There's no two ways about it. And I think that was why the girl in my comments the other day was so keen on the whole Brett Douglas McDowell thing, because it's so easy for us to get dragged into it and for it to feel like it's our problem, because we've all had similar things happen to us, I think. So it does touch us and we do get that sense of injustice and all of that. And I think we're still all waiting on this thing of, is the vansham actually, you know, will the judge turn around and throw this out of court and wipe all of those text messages out of evidence? Is he really going to finally, you know, make a decisive move in favour of Justin's legal argument? We're still holding out on that, aren't we? And now it's like, and this is kind of the extent of it. There is no limits to what a narcissist will do, and that's why you can't negotiate with them and you can't predict what they'll do, because what you morally think you would or wouldn't do has nothing to do with what a narcissist will or won't do, or what they might conceive of. And we're seeing it now in terms of, you know, Blake Lively believes that she can just have all of the communications between Justin's attorneys. Now, whether that's just for harassment or whether she actually truly believes that she's entitled to that, she seems to feel like she's entitled to every aspect of everybody's life and everybody's communications. I mean, how is an attorney supposed to defend his client? And it's that thing of, as well with narcissism, her representatives can go out and speak publicly and make comment, and her publicist can, but Justin's side cannot, because that's defamation, it's a secret smear campaign, it's collusion with other parties. It has to be something else. It's still boiling down to that nub of Blake Lively cannot take accountability for her own actions and her own personality. She cannot cope with being called on her BS, basically. She still cannot face the fact that it was her own interviews, her own actions, her own marketing strategy that's taken her down this route. And it's like, last night I was just settling down to go to bed and Candace Owens popped up and it's subpoenaed by Blake and Ryan. Oh no, I'm going to have to watch this in bed. This is no good. And then I had to watch Without a Crystal Ball in bed, and Perez Hilton in bed, and Andy Signore on Popcorn Planet in bed, which is why I probably didn't sleep very much last night, just to get the gist of what was going on. So if you've not come across it, it seems like somebody in Blake's camp approached someone senior at TMZ and said, Andy Signore has been subpoenaed, Candace Owens has been subpoenaed, Perez Hilton has been subpoenaed to see if basically if they've been colluding in this smear campaign that would have had to have happened before that CRD you know, starting way back, like years back, we're talking about, that there's been collusion all along. You know, she just doesn't get it that it started in that promo campaign, that it didn't exist before then. You know, that Kirsty saw, you know, a few funny little bits and bobs and Justin missing on the thing and thought, oh yeah, I remember that weird interview I did with Blake. I wonder if it's worth kind of giving that a boost. And, you know, and she probably never expected all of this, but it was just like, you know, it tweaks your brain, doesn't it? Oh yeah, I remember that funny interaction. Yeah, I kind of tried to dismiss it at the time. I thought maybe I was off or maybe they were having a bad day, but let's bring it to the fore again. She cannot handle that that's literally what happened. It has to have been, you know, some weird collusion. So I was quite tickled last night when Candace kind of went into her phone and Googled Blake Lively's name in her text messages, and there's barely anything that she's ever conversed with her staff or anybody about Blake Lively. I think the first thing that came up was that she was admiring a ring that Blake Lively had been pictured with, and the next thing was when the Kirsty video was going viral, and she kind of said we need to touch on this in the show, and that's literally it. So she was literally showing up her phone to the camera saying, here, look, you don't need a subpoena, I'll subpoena myself, you know, you can, it's the text messages, you can have them. And you know, I think Andy Signore was a bit more upset because obviously when you're a smaller creator and if legal things are going to be brought into it, it's a big deal because, you know, you don't, you know, we have free speech and, you know, journalists are allowed to comment on pop culture. It doesn't mean that you're collaborating in a smear campaign, you know what I mean? And I think Perez just laughed it off, didn't he? You know, it's like, it's not even happened yet. It may happen. But what is it all about? Is it kind of some kind of subtle threat? Is it just more SEO manipulation? So that's the story that's out there, keeping that conspiracy theory smear campaign front and centre or at the top of the search results. Is that what it's about? Or are they genuinely going to subpoena them and they're genuinely hoping to also get access to Bryan Freedman's files over at Liner Freedman Tattleman, etc.? And they really think they're going to get all this stuff. But what's more clear than anything else at all is the fact that without those text messages that may or may not get dismissed along with the vansham subpoena and all the rest of it, they literally still have no case. They still have no case. They believe that Justin and his team are the sole people in the world that can create an invisible, untraceable smear campaign. So they have to investigate every avenue, every person, every content creator, la 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 la, and all of it is simply just to foster the narrative that Blake Lively is not responsible for her own behaviour. That's literally what this is all about. A narcissist cannot be told that their behaviour is not acceptable, that it's not popular, that they were wrong, that their idea was wrong. She can't handle that it wasn't okay to market hair products and booze products and create cocktails based around an abusive character's name when you're promoting a movie about DV. She cannot handle that they were considered wrong, that her ideas, maximum effort's ideas, Ryan's tweaks to the script, whatever it was, that the public did not like them, that it did not gel with them, and they didn't like all of the interviews that followed and the flippancy and the way she turned everything to hair products, that a mention of it got in at everything. You know, the public do not like you treating them and survivors like that, and they certainly don't like you using I'm a supporter of women and girls, you know, because I've been through this thing now, this thing which we saw on the dance montage clip, that if she's calling that SH, she really has no clue in life. She you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's kind of up to date, isn't it? I do keep trying to, I know Jed Wallace, we're kind of hanging out with him, aren't we, just to see if he's going to get dismissed out of Blake's case. Obviously, he's still got his case against her. But literally, she's hanging on to him by a thin thread at this point. There might be hopefully a good chance that he will get dismissed out of her case because she doesn't have anything against, any evidence. That's the problem. And it is interesting to see kind of how she's kind of new advert out for a booze brand, and she's, Ashley Brianna Eve, pointing out this idea that Ryan and Blake are still trying to evoke in you a sense of nostalgia with the things that they are doing in the marketing and the way they're styling themselves, and Blake bringing in this ex-co-star from Gossip Girl to make those, Blake's core fan base that came up with her from Gossip Girl, kind of, just trying to reel them back in and say, oh, you remember the days when this group of people felt really good, and connecting it back into the booze brand in the hopes of both, I guess, making for a successful launch, and also kind of recovering maybe some Instagram followers that she's lost. But, it's, other than that, it's kind of quiet, isn't it? And you kind of have to think what's going on behind the scenes, because it's like I said early on, and I said it quite, what we on 40 odd videos now. I said it quite early on that I believed that Bryan Freedman was kind of playing the long game. That initial thing, the initial complaints, and the website that came out, and all of the stuff and the material, I kind of think they had to do that because they had to have an immediate PR pushback against the narrative that was out against him. I think probably there's a good chance all along that he knew good chunks of that would get dismissed, but it was very important to not be on the back foot, that they were up against powerful forces, and there had to be, that they needed the public on board, basically. So I kind of have always felt that he kind of knew that a lot of that wasn't going to fly, but it had to be out there because the narrative was going against Justin. There had to be some materials out there that were switching that up. And I said quite some time ago that I always felt like, because he's dealing with like people with narcissistic tendencies, and you can't predict that, as I've said, you kind of have to play quietly because you kind of can't really move until they move. And so you can be in a constant reacting to their things. But I always feel like he's been kind of very fluid behind the scenes as to how they were going to strategically tackle this. And I always thought that if he could make it criminal, he would do that if he could, where that was possible. And I do think there's the potential for some of that going on behind the scenes to do with the whole vansham thing and the illegally obtaining people's materials, and potentially this, when this is over, if Justin wins it, that coming back with some kind of malicious prosecution case, as Omar, Tilted Lawyer, has said. I do think that there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes, and we just kind of have to keep cool, keep calm, and see what happens. I do think there's going to be a massive uproar if the judge kind of lets the whole vansham and sham of it all go through. I do think that's going to be very problematic for him. That will be interesting. We might still be talking an appeal down the road, because I think more and more now discovery is progressing. It's clear that the judge probably wasn't, I'm no legal expert, but I think it's looking more likely that the judge shouldn't really have chucked this out before there was more discovery done. And that is quite unusual from what most pundits are saying that have legal knowledge, to have not allowed the discovery process when literally that's what it's for. It's like, in your own head what you think has happened, but you need specific information, don't you? Or the judge didn't even let it get to that point, did he? But now more and more is coming out, and you've got, the vansham subpoena, and now it's like supposedly in Ryan Reynolds' hands. And what has Ryan Reynolds got to do with Jen Abel? Who's he got a contract with? Why did Ryan Reynolds need 10 subpoena recipients, and this whole, the most important thing about all of that really is the fact that it cut out Justin, Jamie, Jen from knowing that there was a subpoena out for communications related to them, and it took away their right to be forewarned and forearmed. And that has to be dodgy, doesn't it? It really, 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 truly has to be dodgy. Anyway, I think that is it for today. I'm sure there are other things, but it's kind of been a couple of days since I last did a video, and there's been so much happening. But I think that's the main aspects, main elements of it. But yeah, I just think it's that infuriating, slippery thing of trying to deal with narcissists and trying to predict the next actions, and them kind of laughing in your faces all along, because and it's kind of, you just have to roll with it and not rise to it and not get overly emotional about it if you can, because you can't do anything about their actions. You can't predict, what levels they'll go to. And I do think there's a big aspect of this that, for narcissists, we know kind of thing, that it doesn't matter whether it's good things, good attention or bad attention, it's all feeding their need for kind of consternation and aggravation. So even though, aspects of this look bad for them, they kind of love rubbing people's noses in it, don't they? It's kind of that thing of, look what we can do, we can still be out and about, we can still be one of Time 100's top businesses, and I looked at that cover and I thought, who is advising Ryan Reynolds on this makeup? He's like a bronze statue, isn't he, when he's out in public? It's like, who looks at his skin tone and thinks, yeah, that's the right shade? And why is he wearing full makeup? Can you tell me that? Is this a Blake thing, as he advised, because he looks to her for styling choices, so I'm wondering if if she chooses his colour match, But yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, look, I can even get the back of my head put on the Time 100 cover, and I know that, even if it's negative press that comes about me, it's all press, it's all my name in the headlines, it's just that thing of rubbing your nose in it, and that the sheer entitlement of Blake, isn't it, that she feels she's, that Justin isn't allowed a defence, that anything he does in terms of trying to defend himself or ask for information is all publicity related. It's all them fostering their need to create negative publicity for Blake. It's not about defending himself, it's about defaming her. So anything anybody says, be it Justin, who isn't saying anything, or his team, who largely aren't saying anything, but it has to be defamation. It can't be defending himself, it can't be his right, because if negative things are being said about Blake, it has to be defamation, because Blake Lively does nothing wrong. She's in the right, she's this champion of women and girls, so anybody saying any different, there has to be some criminality to it, or something that's illegal or untraceable and unsmearable and all of the rest of it. And she is entitled to know what that is, because nothing else feeds her narrative, basically. And it's like I say, just try not to get too angry, too emotional, too upset about it, because the loser here is them. I mean, they'll always be rich. There'll always be something in business. They may or may not stay together. I'm starting to think now that possibly they will stay together, because in many ways they seem like the perfect couple. They seem like they share very similar values. So maybe they will stick together. Maybe they'll make it work. But would you really want to be them? Would you want to have their life? Jesus, would you want to be one of their kids? You know what I mean? It's not, they're already paying the price, if you like, because I would, think about it for yourself. You might like to have the money, you might like to have fame or success, but would you like to live in that mentality? Would you like to be the kind of person that would do this to somebody that would have no accountability whatsoever? And, Ryan in these articles trying to say he's a good person and he treats people well, and that's why he gets on with them, and that's why he's successful. And you think, oh, well, in that meeting at Justin's didn't go so well. Even like Sony executives were saying, we've never heard somebody spoken to in that way. And, you know, so that's the thing with a narcissist. They can't keep track of what they're saying. They can't remember what yesterday's lie was. They can't remember the fabrication, and the story about themselves and the people around them is changing constantly. That's why they're so frustrating and infuriating to deal with, you know. So we kind of have to take a chill pill on that one and just do our best. Anyway, that's it for right now. Hope you enjoyed it. Please do hit that like and subscribe if you can, and drop me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. See you later.